It's part of our session of kind of helping people navigate their way through startups and careers and understanding the working environment, especially post-COVID, where I know a lot of you are concerned or have questions about it. You know, we're a year and a half now into this whole pandemic, and things sometimes go up, things sometimes go down. So hopefully today also helps you from an education and information sense as well. So similar to other sessions, we're gonna cover it over, I guess, 3 or 4 different sections. I guess first is to actually understand what is a Slashie and how Slashies are actually being presented in this world. You know, what they are, who they are, why they even exist. We're then going to look at how they interact with the current work model. You know, so there's a different work model that we're currently undertaking in 2021 with, you know, working from home, with hybrid work models, things like that. We're going to understand how the Slashies kind of interact with that. But they're going to talk about a bit about yourselves. You know, are you guys jack of all trades or masters of one or masters of none in some cases, right? Where, you know, you're one of those multifaceted, multi-skilled people who wants to pursue everything, or you're one of those people who just wants to fixate and concentrate on one thing. And then we're going to talk about exactly what you want to do in the future. So that's a bit about what we're going to do today. A bit about me. I'm not going to speak too much about it. I think most of you know me pretty well by now. What I will say is, you know, Andrew gave me a good introduction. I spent most of my career in finance and investment banking. Even within the finance realm, I was a bit of a generalist. So I covered finance and operations mainly and strategy. And towards the end of my career, when I was a COO, the reason I got that role in the end was because I was a kind of Slashie within the investment banking environment. I had covered multiple functions, multiple roles, multiple types of product set. And within that space, I defined myself as someone who could probably do many things more than just one thing. And when I quit investment banking and started my own consultancy, I deliberately made it an attempt to try to be multifaceted. You're going to hear me use that word a lot. And what does that mean? It means trying to be an individual who can do multiple things successfully, but also someone who aligns their personal interests and hobbies and passions with exactly what they're doing. And now I run my own consultancy. I'm a co-founder for a couple of startups. I'm a cook, if you like, even though I'm not a particularly good one. And I do various other things. So you'll see how that takes shape later. So let's crack into it straight away. The definition of a Slashie, okay? Someone who essentially undertakes multiple roles or multiple jobs instead of choosing to be in one fixed career path. What would an example of a fixed career path being? Someone like an accountant or a lawyer, you know, usually they go into a university setting or a college setting and they decide that their degree or whatever they're learning is something that they're probably going to end up pursuing as a career, you know, indefinitely. And accountancy and law are pretty good examples of this, because you have to go through certain levels of qualification, you have to go through certain professional qualifications and then move forward through that particular career path. And as you go up that career ladder, it actually tends to weigh down on you because you are pretty much, you know, caught along that path. You know, it's hard to escape. It's hard to do something else from left field. And more importantly, you know, you start to question why you'd want to do something else when that career is providing for you and you've invested so much time, money, and effort into actually establishing yourself. So Slashie actually looks at the other way, right? The Slashie says, well, I'm interested in many things. I need money from many assets or from many avenues. I need to allocate my time differently. How do I multitask, right? How do I become multifaceted? And they take the approach that I can do multiple jobs. Now, all those jobs don't need to be, you know, high-end, tier one, you know, blue chip jobs. They don't need to be an accountant and lawyer at the same time, for example. They can be an accountant and a chef. They can be an accountant and a dog walker. And we're going to see various examples today, myself being one of them, of how a Slashie kind of establishes themselves as a person who can do many things, sometimes within the same industry, usually across multiple industries, and how actually the workplace now has made it easier for people to become more multifaceted and do various things. And that's to do with part-time roles. It's to do with the internet and the facilitation of people doing things remotely and doing things online and on their own time terms. But it's also to do with people's interests. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you know, kind of mid 2000s when I was at university, my view on life was, you know, you had to have one job. And when you didn't have one job, you moved to another job. Whereas in 2021, and especially over the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen this, especially in Western culture, people of the opinion, well, I can handle more than one job. And why can I handle more than one job? Because the internet allows me to. the digital age has made things more automated that I can actually swap and do more roles. And that's a bit like a freelancer. So a freelancer is halfway between a traditional employed person and a slashie. What a freelancer says is, well, I don't want to work for a company. I want to do things on my own terms. But, I understand that it's going to be project-based or hour-based. I understand that, I'm going to have highs and lows when it comes to work. I may have projects, I may not have projects. What a slashie has done is they've taken that concept and said, well, how much further can I go with that? And they've essentially said, well, look, I'm a freelancer, but across multiple pots. So in my free time, I want to walk dogs. And I know people who do this for a living. But then between 9 to 5, I want to pursue my career as a lawyer. I want to pursue my career as an investment banker. I want to pursue my career as a marketer. And they find time and they find mechanisms which allow them to do multiple roles. So that's essentially what a slashie is. And in 2021, it's obviously become a bit of a fad. Everyone likes the idea that they can do multiple things. It makes them seem more skilled. It makes them seem more rounded, more exposed. And it's become a bit of a fashion and a fad going forward. And it's something that's permeating slowly into Asia, where people are realizing that actually it's quite a cool thing to do because it allows you to align your interests as well as, fixed careers, but it also allows you to earn more money and sometimes have greater flexibility within your life, especially in the long term. Famous people in front of you. It's very easy. If I asked you who Clint Eastwood was, most of you would just say he's a very famous actor and director, but he's also a producer. He's also a composer. He owns multiple restaurants. He runs multiple charitable organizations. It's not listed there, but he does. And he's a father, he's a son. He's not a son anymore, but he's a father, he's a grandfather. He has multiple roles to play in his life, just like Justin Timberlake, just like Jessica Alba. And they are people we wouldn't probably call slashies. We'd probably call them, people who have multiple roles in their life or multiple jobs. But to me, it's one and the same. And it's important to understand that if you have a certain amount of motivation, interest, passion to do multiple things, these people are very good examples for you to actually show that you can pursue them as well. So someone like Justin Timberlake, we all traditionally think of him from his NSYNC days where he was dancing around singing songs. He then became an actor. He then became a famous restaurateur actually on the New York scene because he was interested in food, and he started his own clothing art. Now in these people's cases, there may have been financial incentive to pursue those. There may have been financial incentive to be a slashie. But the lessons learned from them are exactly the same to which we can apply ourselves. And it's important because it shows you that even at their level, where they're successful musicians, actors, directors, they're able to hold multiple successful roles across their entire life, across all their remits. And Jessica Alba, for me, is probably the best example because she has one of the best companies. The Honest Company is doing fantastically well. It's one of the biggest return on investments out there for anyone associated with Hollywood. She runs her own clothing lines. She still manages to do TV works. She's the modern epitome of both a working woman, working mother, and a slashie. She's been able to orientate her interests towards her working life. And I think that those are really good examples which you should take on board. A more low-key example of a slashie and how the name came about. Okay, so look at Darian Levitch, and I've got Darian's permission to show this, so no problems there. Darian to me is the perfect example of a slashie, and you can see why it's called slashie because he uses a slash after every aspect of his after every work aspect he has underneath him. So he's a speaker, he's a practitioner, he's an equity strategist, which is a very, very full-time, intensive job. He's also a strategy director. He's, recovering DI practitioner. He does everything. He's exactly the perfect definition of a slashie, and he embraces it. He loves it. And when I ask him, hey, Darian, how do you commit your time to this? How do you commit your energy to this? He says, well, because it interests me, I find energy, I find time, I find the resources I need to pursue these to the best of my abilities. And he freely admits that over time, he may drop one or the other, or he may add something else to his slashie portfolio. And this is really interesting because it shows the flexibility and the ability to actually be more varied in your approach to life. And for those of you, especially who are younger in the audience, I definitely recommend looking at people like Darian as very good examples, because Darian became a slashie not because he really wanted to do all those things. It's more because he didn't know what he wanted to do. And someone advised him, you know what, why make a choice now? At the age of 21, why make a choice? Have your fully fledged career in banking as an equity research analyst, have your career as an actor and speaker, and see which one plays out. And maybe all play out, maybe none play out, maybe some play out and some others don't. And he really approached it in a really positive way. And I think the way the world is working now with the remote culture and kind of globalization at its peak, other than the travel aspect, it's the perfect opportunity for people to say, shall I have a portfolio career, right? Shall I have the career that allows me to do multiple things and show multiple interests and become this ideal modern employee? And just a bit more on that. What do I mean by the modern employee? Well, on an average week, I probably see maybe 10, 15 people for interests working with me in Trynkle or some of the other things I do. And I look at their CVs and their resumes, and essentially, they're all pretty linear in their approach. And they've done accountancy degrees, they've done business degrees, they've done marketing degrees, and they want to orientate their career according to one avenue. But then once in a while, I come across a real strong, different, varied resume or CV where someone is, a part-time artist, but they're also a, crypto research analyst. Sometimes they're own a cat cafe, but they also happen to be a Bitcoin miner. Sometimes they happen to be a chef and then also be a furniture design expert. And those people, because they're embraced in a variety of activities on a daily basis, they also come at you and come with you on a different journey. They see things from multiple aspects. They see things from a different work ethic perspective. They're very usually good at managing projects and managing time really well because they're used to it in their own personal life. Obviously, it comes with its own challenges, but nowadays, for me, a modern employee is someone who can embrace a variety of jobs. And I know a lot of you in the audience are worrying about, should I become a specialist or a generalist? And I don't think there's any right answer to it. I think if all your passion is orientated towards one thing, such as becoming a doctor or a lawyer, and then those are really time-consuming jobs, then it's difficult to become a generalist. But there are multiple avenues available for you now to try at least before you make a decision. So I think that's one thing to work in mind. Going back to what I was saying earlier, the modern world is changing dramatically. I mean, when was the last time any of you really worked a 9 to 5 for 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year? I presume it's not often for most of you, especially in light of COVID and what's happened. I mean, my working day sometimes becomes 12 to 7. It becomes 1 o'clock in the morning to 6 in the morning. It's just so varied and so different. And the ability, as I mentioned, with technology and the idea of remote working happening at the moment so significantly allows you to explore multiple opportunities. Should I open my own business? Should I open my own cat cafe? Should I open my own baby distribution company, etc.? And so think about that and the new work and the new working world and how you're going to fit into that. Now, other elements that have changed, like I said, if you look at employers at the moment, their HR departments are being inundated with requests about flexibility. How do you talk about things like employee well-being? How do you talk about things like flexi time? How do you talk about things like work-life harmony and work-life balance? And these are questions that employers are having to answer because people are waking up realizing that actually it isn't just the salary I take home every month that's important. It's also my interest in the role. It's also the time I'm allocating for a role. It's the freedom, the team I'm working with, the friends I'm working with, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really important to understand because if employees are thinking about changing their working infrastructure and their working arrangements, you also need to be adaptable to that. You also need to be flexible to that. You may not like what they're changing into, or you may like it even more. And as a result, your impression of what you want your work life to constitute needs to change. And that's one of the reasons Slashies came about, because they were able to navigate and be malleable to the changing working environment that they saw in front of them. Obviously, the big proponent and one of the biggest things and pushes that was behind the Slashie movement was technology. Right now, any of you can go online on the internet and find a job in Papua New Guinea or Japan or New York City. And barring visa complications and COVID, there's probably a reasonably strong chance that you'd be involved in the process. You may get shortlisted, or you may have your resume looked at. And 20 years ago, that wasn't possible. I grew up in London, and when I grew up, I didn't even think about working overseas because for me, it was, well, I grew up in London, I studied in London, I have to work in London. And it was only until I was in my mid-20s, I realized that actually there's no rule, there's no law that says I can't apply for a job overseas. There's no academic qualification that restricts me from applying for a job overseas or in another time zone or in another geography. And some of these things have just become Super Bowl and hyperbole really dramatically in the last 10, 15 years because of technology and the internet. We now can work from our phones. We now can work in the comfort of our lounge. We can work on airplanes if we have to. And as a result, you can see how a Slashie would be an attractive proposition to many people just because the internet allows them to do it. And I'm a good example. I work in Singapore time zone, Hong Kong time zone, but I also interact with startups in London. And I don't do that at the same time as I'm working on my Hong Kong startup. I do it at a different time because I'm allowed to. I give coaching on the side, usually on the American time zone parameters, because it fits in my time. And because I'm interested in those things, I find the time. And technology has facilitated it for me. It manages my schedule really well. It makes me more organized and allows me to become an effective Slashie, if you like. Market evolution. Now, this slide is quite important to me, and I think it's aimed to spur interest in all of you so that you view Slashies and becoming a Slashie as a realistic proposition. Okay, now changing up cultures is a really good example to this. Our culture is changing by the minute. You know, it wasn't changing that fast 10, 15, 5 years ago. At the moment, it's changing ridiculously fast, and people's expectation and social structures are changing accordingly. So going back to my previous point, the working environment has changed because culture is changing. Therefore, our approach to work and our mentality to what we expect from work also is going to change. How we carry out our lifestyle is a good example. We pay cashless now more than we do with physical cash. And as a result, there are more jobs in that space. There are more cashless developers. There are more cashless enterprises and startups coming about. There are more people interested in financial inclusivity, etc. And as a result, there are more jobs available to people who are interested in those things. And some of those jobs are part-time, some of those jobs are freelancing, some of those jobs are even 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week. But if it's a job and you're doing it, it can essentially make you a Slashie. So think about that. Globalization, pretty much going back to my previous point, one of the things I would recommend a lot of you to do, and especially since most of you are in Asia, I know there's a couple of you in the States on the call, but in Asia, the Slashie revolution or evolution, shall we say, hasn't really kicked off in a fast-paced way at the moment. It's slowly developing. But in America and Western culture, it's been there for quite a while now. So take the opportunity to go to people like the ones I showed you, or friends and family in other countries who are Slashies or thinking about becoming Slashies, and understanding, you know, how does it work in what you're doing? Can I do the same thing? You know, ask them the pertinent question. And globalization facilitates that because we've become more interconnected. Digitalization is really important. You know, a lot of people ask me, Rish, what's the difference between being a Slashie and a hustler? Well, being a Slashie to me is still slightly more formalized. You know, you've got specific roles and jobs. And I think if someone asked you to list your jobs, it'd be easy. Being a hustler is a bit more different. It's a bit more vague, but it's vague because there's no parameters attached to it, you know? So potentially I'm creating YouTube content for someone. To me, it's a job, but to other people, it's just a side hustle, right? Maybe helping someone proofread something, that's not a job to me, but it's a side hustle for me because I'm trying to get funding, I'm trying to get money in, I'm trying to just make up my time, I'm trying to find something to do. And YouTube and Instagram in particular have created this hustle Slashie culture and taken it to the max, because now everyone can use that technology or those technologies to find a way of monetization, making money, find a way of actually spending time, doing something creative, something imaginative. So, you know, take this opportunity when you're at the peak of culture, the peak of globalization, and the peak of digitalization to actually embrace potentially going and doing something else with your life and maybe becoming a Slashie. You know, a lot of one of the things as a career coach that I always get asked is, well, Rish, you know, everyone says, you know, generalist is a big thing at the moment, and you know, why not I try that? But if I try that, I could just amount to nothing. I might not be good enough at one of those things to become successful at it. And those are really valid points. But the reason generalization is taken off isn't just because people want to do many things. It's also because people have become forced to do many things. So if I think about my own experience, I'm pretty good at strategy, operational processes, technology, things like that. But I was never a world leader at any of those things, right? I was probably good, but never a world leader. But when you put everything together, I suddenly became an attractive proposition to employers because there's a guy who could handle many, many things for me. But it was also because we're going through an automation, digitalization revolution in the workforce. And we're seeing jobs and tasks are being, you know, automated by technology, and you know, data science and digitalization has come into a lot of organizations and pretty much streamlined a lot of them. So now people who were traditionally, I'll give you a good example, an accounting bookkeeper who, you know, would go and do double entry recording on a daily basis, someone who was really, really niche at what they were doing. Now their role has become automated. I can get any piece of software off the internet to do that person's job. So then that person starts to question, well, what am I going to do next? And that's how people develop into really becoming generalists. They try different things at the work. They get themselves involved in a variety of projects. They get themselves involved in a variety of functions as well. And the more automation comes in place, the actual reality is there's going to probably be more generalists out there. So people who can accompany and be complementary to the automation or the digitalization. People can lead those initiatives because they've seen those initiatives across a variety of spectrums. And I think that's really important to not see the digitalization and automation as an empowerment, an enabler, more than as something that's going to affect your livelihood and is going to be a negative thing. I think that's a really, really important thing. But for those of you who also like the idea of just being a master of one trade or focusing on one thing, you can do that. That's still available out there. We're still going to need leaders in those sections. We're still going to need people to drive those initiatives, drive research, drive creative thinking, drive thought leadership in those initiatives. So your world hasn't suddenly become smaller. It's become a bit smaller, but not significantly. And just think about the rationale of why you want to do things. So if you want to become an accountant or a doctor, make sure that your motivation and your inclination to do that is justified in the back. Make sure you've thought it through. Make sure you're not just doing it on a whim just to have a traditional career. Because at the moment, you could probably become a doctor and do something else on the side. You could probably take up law and try your hat at marketing, for instance, and see how that figures out. And especially those of you who are slightly younger, who haven't made those significant decisions in your life yet, the world is at your feet. So just think about where you want to portion yourself. Do you want to be a specialist or a generalist? And that is a navigation process that takes time, takes a lot of communication with people close to you, people who know you well. And also it takes a lot of honesty to actually talk about what it is you actually want to do. And becoming a slashie isn't for everyone. It isn't. It's very time consuming sometimes. It's very energy draining sometimes, but it presents an outlet that you may not have envisaged being there at the beginning. I've talked about this before in a couple of other talks. I'm not going to specifically talk about it, but I did talk about navigating that journey of where you want to be. Do you want to be a slashie? Do you want to be a specialist, or do you want to be somewhere in the middle, if that middle even exists? Or do you maybe even want to just do one now and maybe transition to one later? Now, for those of you who know me quite well, I kind of hold this GPS formula to heart quite well. So, the slide will be made available to you. If anyone wants help navigating it and talking through it, please get in touch with me. And I think it's important. It helps you ask yourself the questions that are important in helping you decide what your future is going to be. And, one of the things we all make this mistake of at some stage in our career is to follow a career that doesn't necessarily align with our passions or doesn't necessarily align with our gifts. Okay, and I've done it. I mean, I went into investment banking not because I was passionate about it. It was more because I happened to be quite good numerically and because it was an opportunity to make quite a lot of money at a young age, And then only later in my life did I realize that, well, where's my passions in this whole equation? Like, I liked movies. Why am I not doing something in movies? I liked creating content. Why am I not doing something in content creation? I liked, financial technology, but why did I go into investment banking instead of financial technologies? And the GPS formula when I was in my early 30s helped me navigate that problem solving kind of journey. And it came up with really good results. So I'm not going to go into the details of this, but please reach out to me if anyone really wants to. I think it's important. And I've got a completely separate deck on this, which helps you understand who you are and exactly what you want to do. Just a bit more on this, I think one of the important things is on this slide is the services part, right? And services essentially to me means, how did you monetize and make sure that your gifts and passions can be a value add service to others? Sometimes that means making money. Sometimes it doesn't mean making money. And why is that important when you're being a slashie? Because all your slashie roles or all your slashers may not be profit driven. Okay. So for instance, I'm a non-executive director for a non-profit organization. I do it purely out of interest in helping that organization, not because I'm trying to make money out of it. But then I'm affiliated to a couple of startups because I'm trying to make money out of those startups. So it's important you understand exactly where your personality fits in this and whether you're trying to monetize, not monetize, or find somewhere in the middle. And that's all I'll say on that one. This is a really important slide. Now, if you look at it, in the space of now to 26, 27, so 5-6 years time now, how the traditional employment industry is changing. And like I said, what does this mean? Traditional employment industry means a fixed job with a fixed employer, or one fixed employer. So, imagine you're working for Google, imagine you're working for Goldman Sachs, imagine you're working for Temasek or whoever. Suddenly that industry has started to kind of contract a bit. And people are realizing, well, look, in the past, I wanted fixed employment. I wanted traditional employment because they gave me benefits. They gave me insurance. They gave my kids education, maybe. They gave me medical. They gave me 20 days annual leave. And that's a really smart trick that employers use, because they load your contract and they load your profile with so many things that you think you may need, and that gives the job an additional added value. And that's why a lot of people are scared to leave traditional jobs, especially now during COVID. It's like, people say to me, oh, I'd be crazy to leave my job because it gives me medical benefits. I'll be crazy to leave my job because they allow me to work from home. I'll be crazy to leave my job because it pays for my kids' school fees, whatever the circumstance may be. But because you've seen things in a reasonably finite, defined way, you're not really seeing everything outside of that. And Slashies fit in the world outside of that. Because what Slashies or the freelance industry has shown is, well, I'm willing to sacrifice those benefits, that model of traditional employment, to be more flexible. And what does flexibility give me? It gives me more time. What does time give me? It allows me to maybe do more jobs, spend time with my kids, spend time with my dog, bake in my spare time, maybe go to movies more often, maybe read more books. It also may allow me to make more money because I'm able to do more jobs, okay? It maybe allows me to have freedom to do a 6-month project, take a month off, and then do another 4-month project. And in that month off, I go to Peru and look at the mountains, whatever it may be. And this traditional employment model is drastically changing. And that's why you're seeing this big furore amongst employers now to try to make their employees as happy as possible, because they're worried that employers are just one day going to come in and say, hey, you know what? I quit. I'm going to go and become a freelancer. I'm going to go and take 20 part-time jobs, and I'm going to be happy doing it. So think about how the world is progressing month to month, year to year, especially in light of what's happened with COVID. And don't view Slashies and side hustles as now, kind of something opaque or something that, is going against the norm, or something that is somehow bad to do and my parents are not going to like it, or my partner's not going to support me in it. They're becoming more ingrained in the normal way of life than you actually think. And for people like who traditionally 5 years ago came to me and said, hey, Rish, I want to be a Slashie, I probably would have been like, well, guys, look, it's a recession and, COVID might come or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I wish I could predict COVID, but I didn't at the time. But, they might come up with these type of, I might have come up with these type of excuses for them. But now there's not really that many excuses, because the technology and the mindset allows these things to work slightly better in 2021 and 2027 more than it did 5 years ago. So think about, how is the future of work going to be? There's someone I work with in one of my startups, and she does a lot of the kind of design and content for it. And she sits on a beach in Bali every day. Okay. And when I see her, I get so frustrated and angry because I wish I was on that beach. But then I'm so happy for her because she's found this kind of model of work that seems to suit her and gives her a reasonably cool, relaxed way of life. I mean, she does her work incredibly well at the same time, but she pushes herself out there to allow and has facilitated this own mechanism of work that works for her and is able to do multiple things. So think about the future job and the future of work and how you can potentially evolve into that. And for those of you who have kids who are in their teens and potentially going to college and things like that, your advice should also be for them to think about it as well. Let's not be selfish about this. Let's not think that because we did traditional avenues of work in our youth that we need to impose that on our youth. And that's important, because what will happen is if you do embark them on those journeys, they'll probably get lost. And there'll be some type of vague opaqueness that goes on within their career because of automation, because of COVID, because of other factors that makes them maybe disenchanted and disfranchised with what they're doing. So it's important that we educate our youngsters to embrace this flexibility that we're suggesting. The new work, I talked a bit about this as well last time, but it's very similar. This is really aimed to help you understand the core drivers of what it is to be in an organization or be part of the new working environment. So if I go from right to left, right, high tech, high touch, what does that mean? I mean, we're all being forced to embrace a technologically driven solution to COVID and the pandemic. Example is Zoom. We're all on Zoom today, and we are being forced to embrace these new technologies because we've been put in situations where without these technologies, we may not necessarily survive, or working life may not be as easily facilitated or as efficient as we like it. So you need to understand this world. You need to understand that technology is a part of it, this virtual world. You need to understand that your communication skills, your interpersonal skills need to also adapt and evolve in light of this new world, all right? And one of the benefits of being Slashie in this new world is that your interpersonal relationships can take different shapes and forms. You know, you can have a completely remote job at home selling stuff online, or you can be in the office, in person, on the phone, or, you know, just selling things to clients. So there's a variety there, but the new work is definitely going to involve more technology and facilitation of relationships through technology. So embrace that. Really, really important. You know, develop yourself. I think this is a really, really, it goes back a bit to passions and gifts in the GPS, but it's really, really important to understand what your development value is, okay? And what do I mean by that is, you know, when I look at a CV and I look at anyone who comes to me for a job, I don't just see what they've done and what they're doing. I see what is the potential for them to do. You know, what potential do they have that I can throw them this job or that job, or they can take this function to a new level, or they can see things from a different personality. And that's what I call the development value. And naturally, the older you get, it's very easy to think that your development value goes down. But because of technology, going back to the previous point, actually your development value doesn't necessarily have a limit, because you can learn things online. A few days ago, I went online and did a Google course and learned how to search things more effectively on Google. A few months ago, I did a blockchain mining course about how to mine cryptos and things like that. I never would have thought about doing that 5 to 10 years ago. So my development value there's no limit to that. And I think it's important people really understand what is their development value. And the reason it's linked to your GPS is because traditionally, your development is spurred by things like passion, okay? So if you're a baker, for instance, you become a better baker because you're passionate about it and you try things out. You buy the new ovens, you buy the new baking trays, you try the new butters, you try the new flours, whatever it is, right? And your development value has no limit or develops even further because you've associated your passion or potentially your gift with that and tend to go further, okay? So think about development value. You know, think about what inspires you, you know, what's your inspiration? Why are you even partaking in jobs? You know, why are you even going to work every morning? Why are you even logging into your employee workplace at 9 a.m. in the morning or 1 a.m. at night? You need to be inspired by the things you're doing. And going back to the point about passions, think about the things that you're passionate about and that inspire you, and try to orientate your career towards those things. And in most of our cases, they're not one thing. There's likely to be multiple things. And I know there's a few of you in the audience who are potentially, like, let's say, an accountant who thinks that they might be good on the content side of marketing. Well, try it. Now, you don't need to try that by quitting your accountancy job. You can try it by just doing simple content creation on the weekends. Maybe updating your Facebook, maybe updating your IG, playing around with things, seeing how many likes you get, how many views you get, whatever it is. But that's essentially what a Slashie life enables you to do, to pursue the things that inspire you. And back to the original point of why a lot of us decide to be Slashies, because we want flexibility. I want the flexibility to focus my life on the things that I'm interested in, you know, and I want the flexibility to some days say, you know what, I'm not going to do anything. And for some days to say, well, I'm going to do 10 things. And as long as I'm not compromising on quality, which is an important factor, you know, as long as you're not compromising on quality, safety, and mental health, then why can't you be flexible? Why can't you do 100 things? And I think that's important. Now, I've come to the end. Now, just before I take any questions from anyone, I know there's going to be quite a few questions about this on this topic, and we've got quite a good amount of time to answer the questions. One of the things I would recommend all of you to do is first investigate what it is like to be a Slashie, right? And like I said, go on LinkedIn, go on other people's profiles, ask people who you know are Slashies. You know, it tends to be, at the moment, a lot of, you know, influencers tend to be Slashies as well, because they spend half their life trying influencing things, and they spend half their life in a bona fide traditional career. Okay, so go and investigate what it's like, and before you take any decisions about whether you want to pursue that or whether you want to try and add on another type of function or another type of role to your currently big important portfolio, think about why you're doing it. Think about what's your passion, What are the gifts you have to fulfilling those passions? And generally, how does this whole thing impact you? So the way I phrase this is, if on the whole, it makes you better as an individual, makes you happier and makes you more free, then you should be doing it, right? And I think that's an important thing that a lot of people mistake. They don't think about their own happiness. They don't necessarily think about, is it adding value? Is it contributing to their development value? And they just think about things in very traditional means, such as salary, such as benefits, such as, can I go home at 5 o'clock? Now, if you're going to stick to that traditional model, then maybe the Slashie life isn't for you. Maybe it isn't for everyone. And there are definitely people out there who've tried it and it hasn't really pursued, right? And so think about those things. Try to map your character, try to map your understanding of what you view a Slashie to be like. Try to think about how your current lifestyle fits into that world. And if you need help navigating that, reach out to people like myself or people close to you, and they'll definitely help you go through that. And a lot of people, I've seen a few comments at the moment on the chat and a few things on my WhatsApp where people are saying, it's about certain concepts or, like contentment, happiness, right? And that's really, really important. And a lot of people in the end, they pursue being a Slashie or pursue these type of portfolio careers because they're trying to actually make themselves more content and more happy. And I think that's really important because I personally, at the age of 32, 33, couldn't pursue one career. It was just not enough for me. It was not fulfilling for me. I couldn't really judge my own success. I couldn't really judge my interest levels in that career. So I decided to do 3 or 4 different things at the same time. And luckily it's worked out for me, but it was a slow process. It was a long process. It involved a lot of introspection. And I'd recommend a lot of you do that. So on that note, I think I'll take some questions. Andrew, have you got any questions for me or should I just read from the chat?
Samantha has one question, but maybe I will let Samantha go. I do have one question I want to ask you later on, but maybe let's answer this question by Samantha. How do I manage work-life balance being a Slashie if all of my Slashie jobs will be taking most of my time?
Well, it's a good question, Samantha. So look, when you think about being a Slashie in the first case, you should be thinking about work-life balance and work-life harmony. Okay, so don't commit to doing jobs when you don't have the bandwidth to do it, right? It's a bit like eating a meal and you're full and then you stuff yourself more with food and you end up being sick or you just end up vomiting or whatever. Don't make the same mistake in your career. So slowly precipitate roles, tasks, and functions into your remit. A good manager isn't someone who goes to Samantha and says, hey, there's 100 things, you have to make sure all of them are done. A good manager will say, well, Samantha, you know what, I'm going to give you 50 things, but there's 100 things to do later, but there's 50 things here now. Try your best to do it. And then every time you've got capacity, ask me for more work. Every time you've got capacity to learn, ask me to put you on a course. Every time you want to take more tasks, ask me for that. And that's the same mindset a manager should have, you should have in your own life. And it's really, really important. Don't overload yourself because once you overload yourself, you're actually losing the passion. You'll lose interest. You'll lose energy into all the tasks that you're doing. And then actually all of those verticals of being a Slashie are probably going to become negative and probably going to lose some level of traction. So think about what you're doing, make it incremental change. Now, there's those of you who will come to me and say, well, Rish, I need to do it that way because I need money, right? I need to earn money and there are economic reasons why I'm kind of behaving that way. Well, okay, sure, I totally understand that. But at the same time, even in that instance, organization, personal organization, personal structures, routines help. And that's really important. So when you're mapping yourself out, when you're doing that GPS, you're deciding to take on more work, more roles, more lifestyle options, think about the net result. And that's something I can help you with. That's something a lot of people can help you with. So think about it that way.
Nice. Actually, you somehow managed to answer my question, but maybe my question is a little similar. But I just want to ask, right? Like, being Slashie, doing so many things, right? Like your passion. How do we know, right? Whether this thing really works out? Because at the end of the day, right? What really gives the satisfaction sometimes really the profits, to keep us going. Like, how do we know? And time is so precious, right? Like, how do you know whether this worked out? It's going to work out, and we start doing this. I mean, there's a lot of questions on this, like. I just feel sometimes there's a lot of things I want to do, but I just feel kind of stuck, like whether this will work out. And in the end, the procrastination sets in and we just don't do anything about it. So like, just one question, how do you know whether this will work out?
Look, it's a difficult question, and I don't think there's any right answer. Okay, sometimes it's a leap of faith, right? I don't often say this because I'm quite a scientific guy, but sometimes it's a leap of faith. Now, let me just share with you my personal experience. So whenever I got given a task at work or a new role or something like that, I used to have a little black book next to me, and I used to write down in the black book why I'm doing that task and why I did that job. And sometimes the answer was because I'm good at it. Sometimes the answer was because I want to show the rest of the team that I'm the right person to do the job. Sometimes the answer was money, okay? But it was very clear when I was going into a task, going to a job, or trying out a new thing about my motivation for doing it. Now, a lot of us kind of lie to ourselves. We have this really horrible habit of just saying, well, we're going to do it because someone's asked me to do it, or we're going to do it because, it's the right thing to do. But those don't really fly in the long term. What you need is some real, diligent, constructive reasons why you're pursuing things and why you're doing things. And in the same way at work, like, Andrew, I'm sure at Coast Base Park, every 6 months you meet your manager and your manager says, well, Andrew, you're doing an amazing job and met these KPIs and you met these objectives. Well, if your manager's doing that to you and the organization's doing that to you, well, why don't you do that to yourself, right? So you even preempt that conversation, having your own balanced scorecard and having your own KPIs and having your own objectives. And obviously it doesn't have to be formal if you're doing it yourself, but having those mechanisms helps you avoid falling short a lot of the time, because you're very clear in your mind, what am I going to achieve, right? You're very clear in your mind about what am I going to do this week? You're very clear in your mind about what's the expectation of me and whether I'm falling short or whether I'm not falling short. So when that conversation comes with your manager, you can preempt it and say, well, hey, I know I didn't do these tasks. There are reasons for it, and I'm going to go better. Or you can say, look, I did all those tasks. I think I've got more capacity. Give me more work. And this is a piece of advice I would give everyone for every walk of life. Like even in relationships, think about what you're trying to get out of the relationship, right? Think about what, and then benchmark yourself. So your milestone may be, going to the cinema with your girlfriend. Your milestone may be, remembering your anniversary. It may be ensuring that you have a house after marriage. Whatever the milestones you may have, right? And list them down. And listing is something I really recommend to people, because once you've written it down, it goes from in here, which can be questioned and can be, accused of being, your imagination or you're drunk or whatever. It goes from being something intangible, essentially, to being something much more tangible on a piece of paper. And if you look, a lot of people who are really good at office, I remember when I went to Abu Dhabi for my last run, and I went there, the first person I met was the chief human resource officer. And I walked into her office and she had Post-it notes everywhere. And I was like, what the hell's wrong with this lady? Like, she's crazy. Like, she had a Post-it note for everything. I need to drink my water. I need to answer this email. I need to call my husband. I need to do this. And I was being really flippant about it. And like, oh, she must be a bit cuckoo if she's doing these type of things, right? But she happened to be the most organized person I've ever met in my life, and the most logical person I've ever met in my life, because she had a natural, rational decision tree in front of her, right? And she'd take a Post-it note. Okay, drink water, throw it away. Call husband, okay, throw it away. Do my Excel spreadsheet, throw it away. And it was just so effective. And a lot of people don't do those things because they think it's childish. They think it's it makes me seem like I'm not that detailed, and it makes me seem like I'm not that, I can't remember everything in my mind. But do those things. They're really, really important. And it's, you've got so much technology at our disposal now that helps you list things and put agendas and, calendarify everything. And if you look at my calendar, I'll share with you my calendar one, Andrew. Like there's 10 minutes, there's 10-minute slots to like just take a walk. There's a slot between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock every day where it's me time. And me time is not doing anything to do with work. It's me going on YouTube and looking at yesterday's Premier League football matches. It's me going on the news and checking out what's happened with whatever, So having that organization and setting yourself internal KPIs and benchmarks is really important to ensuring that you're managing your levels of success. And going back to your original question, which I guess was, how do you know whether you're going to be successful at this and when to cut it kind of short and when not to? Look, it's a leap of faith to an extent, but you can make a leap of faith a rational decision. Okay, so if you're jumping off a cliff and you know that it's 2 meters, you know that actually probability suggests I'm going to reach the other side. But if it's 20 meters, no way in hell you're going to reach the other side. So think about it from that perspective and write a logical kind of roadmap of what allows you to achieve your goals. And the other thing is, it's very rare I say this, and I don't think it's for everyone, but I'll say it anyway. Usually, passions trump gifts. Okay. Usually, not always. Okay. There are a lot of people who are very technically competent and have very strong gifts, and they sacrifice their passions to pursue their gifts, and it's really important. But usually, in my experience, people who are passionate about certain jobs, certain walks of life, certain lifestyles tend to enjoy themselves and succeed in those lifestyles more than people who are just naturally gifted, because gifts doesn't necessarily ensure that you're not going to be bored. It doesn't necessarily ensure that you're going to see this until the end of the project. Passion helps you remediate that to a big step, right? And I found this out when I tried my hand at baking once. Okay, so I went through this phase maybe about 4 years ago where I thought I was like Gordon Ramsay and tried to bake loads and loads of things. And I realized that actually the reason I baked was because I'm really good at following instructions. Okay, so I'm really good at following recipes. And so whenever I baked. It turned out really, really well, and I was happy because I followed the recipe and it looked exactly like the picture. But then after about baking 5 or 6 items, I just lost interest, because it was like, well, this is boring. I haven't failed. I'm just doing something that someone else can do. And all right, I'm just going to give it up now. So just to use that as an example, passions usually trumps gifts. So think about your passions, and people need to really understand what they want to do. It's so overrated. It's so underrated, this concept. A lot of people think about what they're good at, and they think about what they should be doing, but they don't think about what they want to do. And that's really, really important.
Nice. Wow. Thank you so much for this valuable tips and everything else. Early on, I also got like the GPS formula. I think, and I look at somewhere else before, like the Japanese call it like the ikigai or something, like what you're good at, what you're passionate about, what does the world need for you, like stuff. I really do think it's really, really powerful. But sometimes, obviously I'm still young. I mean, there's a lot of crowd. All you guys are so much more senior than me here. So yeah, I really do appreciate this this sharing. And if all of you have any questions, still please write it down. We still have just a couple of minutes. And actually, Samantha wrote, the GPS formula has really helped me significantly in understanding myself more. Right, definitely coming from you, Rish. This guy in the screen looked like a character from early on. So yeah. All in all, I just want to thank you for sharing this session here today and all of your time. If all of you still have any questions, do write them still while Rish is still here. And
yeah, just on that note, since you mentioned it, so the Ikigai thing is getting a lot of press at the moment, right? And so, but essentially, for those of you who don't know what Ikigai is, it's essentially finding your sense of purpose. Okay, and the GPS helps you find your sense of purpose, I guess, more from an employment standpoint and career and university standpoint. Ikigai is a bit more about life, but it's an important practice because, if you ever think about it, and I don't know if you have kids, Andrew, but one day, if you're with your kids or you've got nephews or nieces, whatever, go and ask your nephews and nieces, which we all do. Like we all ask kids this question, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then someone will say, oh, I want to be a paleontologist. I want to mix with dinosaurs. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a Formula One driver. I want to be a Premier League footballer, whatever it is. And the reason we ask that question is because we're actually so interested in the answer, because the answer is so untainted. It's a pure answer given by a 3, 4, 5-year-old kid who just tells you essentially what their sense of purpose is. They know nothing of the world. They don't know about COVID. They don't know about taxes. They don't know about anything. So they just give you an unfiltered view of the world. And to me, that's exactly what Ikigai is. It's someone telling me what their purpose in life is. And as adults, we like to confuse it. We like to bring in things like mindfulness, and we like to bring in things like meditation and all these difficult parameters to find that. But essentially what you need to do is ask yourself, what is it you want to do? And sometimes the answer can be really selfish. It can be, look, I want to make money. My purpose in life is I want to make money. And I want to go and travel the world after making all my money. And a lot of people have the answer. There's nothing wrong with that answer. It's just about how you go about it. A lot of people's purpose in life is, hey, I want to make my parents proud. A lot of people's purpose is, I just want to be content and not have stress and be able to watch Game of Thrones every weekday or whatever it is, and just go and do your thing. That is your own sense of purpose and understanding that. And how you come about with that answer is really up to you. A lot of people come up with that answer when they're traveling in the Himalayas. A lot of people come up with the answer when they've had a few too many drinks in Clark Key. A lot of people have come up with the answer a lot of people come up with the answer when they get married and their wife tells them what to do or their husband tells them what to do. So there's no real right answer to that about how you get to the answer. But I think everyone should ask themselves that question: is what is your purpose? What is the reason that what is the thing in life that will give you contentment and happiness and allow you to be yourself as kind of freely as you can without any judgment or anything? So the Ikigai concept is really, really important.
Nice. Now, I think for this sharing today, it's great, right? I can see all of you are still in here. Maybe you can write down what's your one biggest takeaway here. But personally, for myself, I do think the one biggest takeaway is the GPS formula. For people who really do a lot of things like myself, but still trying to find what really suits them. I really think GPS is really helpful. And also, Rish, how can we find you? You have your social media channels here, like what else do you do for people? Like what help do you do for them?
Yeah, so look, guys, you've got my information there. Please reach out to me. Look, essentially, my company Trynkle helps kind of a couple of people. We help organizations with their psychology and understanding their employees and helping them map out their processes with the aim of making a happier, more contemporary and fun workplace, productive and fun workplace. But I also do a lot of coaching and training and therapy sessions on the side where people who are having difficulty kind of navigating these decisions in life, what do I want to do next? Should I quit my job? How do I earn more money? These type of things. A lot of people come to me on a daily basis and I run sessions with them, understanding their GPS, understanding what drives them, their personality, etc. And I think that's really important. I mean, you don't need to seek help if you take the time and you're confident enough in yourself, you maybe don't need the help, but a lot of people don't have that confidence. A lot of people aren't surrounded by people who are necessarily positive all the time. And especially in COVID, where we've spent a lot of time by ourselves, people sometimes get depressed and anxious and worried and don't necessarily have the right outlets to kind of come up with answers. So that's another thing we do at Trynkle. So please reach out to me, anyone in the audience. One of the things I'll say just before I leave, and I don't give homework because obviously it's not an education session, but I don't give homework to people. But one of the things I always recommend people to do when I'm giving this type of session, go to a website like upwork.com, okay, which is a freelancing website, or something like freelancer.com, which is another freelancing website, and go and find the weirdest, most crazy job on the website that you think you might enjoy. And it's just a bit of fun, okay? It's something that all of you should do. Just go and try it, and you'll be so surprised how many weird jobs there are out there. But everyone's weirdness is actually someone else's kind of happiness and contentment, right? So go and do that, and just do it as a kind of lunchtime activity with your friends, and find out what is the weirdest job I could do. Maybe it's something like, oh, I get paid to become a dog walker. Maybe it's something like I get paid to go and put up posters on the MTR, right? Maybe it's something like, I get paid to collect the dirty towels off basketball floors in the NBA, right? There's a job literally out there for anybody. And if you want to be a Slashie and you're comfortable doing some of these type of jobs, try it. Why not try it out? And a lot of these jobs are free, so non-paid jobs. A lot of these jobs earn salaries as well. So just think about it. So it's a bit of homework for all of you in the organization, in the audience. Sorry.
All right. One last question I want to ask you, Rish. What makes you happy in life? Maybe a current state.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things, but I guess there's two parts, professionally and personally. Personally, what makes me really happy in life is traveling and food. Okay, so I like food a lot. I think it's my single greatest joy in the world, like eating really good food. And one of the things that impacted me the most during COVID was my travel schedule just went from there to nothing in like a space of like a day. And I'm really frustrated because there's so many things I want to eat out there in the world, and it bugs me. And I came up with this formula when I first started working, when I was like 22, that I was going to spend 30% of my salary on food. Okay. And I've stuck to this. I'm now 37, and now I've stuck to that formula for the rest of my life. So for those of you who can imagine, like I spend a lot and I like food a lot. Professionally, what gives me the most amount of happiness is knowing that I'm multi-skilled and multifaceted. Okay, that gives me a lot of happiness. I hate being in conversations where I don't know what the other person's talking about. I hate being in conversations where I can't contribute. Okay, and there's obviously that happens to me every day where there's a conversation with someone and I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. But my pursuit to happiness and contentment is making sure that I'm trying every day to be as informed, as smart, as curious as I can be, so that I'm not in a position where I just look like a blur person and don't know anything about that. And that's something that was driven into me from a reasonably young age from my parents. But it's important to me and it gives me happiness because then I can impart that knowledge on someone else, right? And as a coach and as a therapist, that's really important to me. I'm not here to just read you stuff off the internet. I'm here to impart my own knowledge and my own experiences onto you. So I think that makes me happy. And the other idea is, just being in control of what you're doing, And if you think about it, I mean, however old some of you are in the audience, if you think about it, the first 18 to 21 years of your life, you're really not in control of anything. You're not. You get told what school to go to. You get told what TV programs to watch. You get told what food to eat. You get told what clothes to wear most of the time, how to cut your hair, right? It's like, until you're like 21, you go to university, or maybe 18 and you go to university, there's really not that much freedom in your life. Like, you at the age of 12, I can't just make a decision and say, I'm going to go outside and buy Starbucks, right? I have to probably get some money off my parents, or I have to go and do something, or ask permission, blah, blah, blah. So embrace this adult period of your life where, yeah, you have responsibilities, you have obligations, but you also have freedom, and do with that freedom whatever it is you want to do, because you're not going to get many opportunities to do this. And the last year and a half during COVID showed us that we're just such a small kind of being compared to things like this virus. And we whenever we get the opportunity to explore and be ourselves and pursue the things we want to pursue, we should take it with as much passion and energy as we can.
Nice. Rish, maybe just a quick one. Samantha, last one question, a bit of off topic. Have you felt anything or can't help some of the clients? How do you handle that?
Yeah, look, I failed many times in my life, especially when I was younger. I had dreams of being a sportsman, and I failed at that, and it didn't really go the way I wanted it to. And I had to pick myself up. And, like recently when I was watching the Olympics, I remember I was thinking, oh, what if I was there? We all do that, right? We all like watch a sporting event or like a Premier League match. And I was when I was younger, I was quite close to being in a kind of Olympic level team. And then I got injured and it didn't work out for me. And I thought it was like the biggest failure in my life. And I realized that it just wasn't me. There were people better than me out there, and I just couldn't do it. And there were times when I can't help people as well. And the reason I can't help people usually is because I haven't asked them the right questions, or because I am not being as open-minded as I should be with them. And there are clients, maybe not as much now, but in the past, where I've tried to, like I said, I've tried to impart knowledge that I've learned from the internet, or I've tried to relate them to another specific circumstance. But each of us are individuals, and each of us do things in different ways. And it's important you listen, and it's important that you grow and you learn, and then you impart knowledge based on their particular set of circumstances. And for those of you who are giving advice to others, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is, don't regurgitate advice. Don't tell the same advice to me as you would to John, or to Andrew, or to Samantha, or whoever, because everyone's advice needs to be bespoke and customized and slightly different. And no one wants to feel that they're just another robot in the factory of robots. Okay, so when you're giving advice and you're imparting knowledge on people, it's really important that you see them for who they are and treat them as individuals. And look, I had to go through a lot of failures to come up with that piece of advice and that realization. But yeah, look, if you don't fail in life, you're probably not challenging yourself hard enough. That's my advice. And failure is just as important to success as being successful and doing things the right way. And the trick in life is to fail as much as you can at a young age, and not fail as much as you can at an old age, because when you're at an old age, it probably impacts you a bit more.
Nice. All right. Thank you all for attending today's session. If you have any more questions, just type it in. Maybe I'll send an email to you, and the recording to you will send to all of you. And once again, thank you, Rish, again, for sharing this valuable session here today. Appreciate your time here.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone.
Thank you all so much. I'm going to end the session right now. Have a great day ahead.
Sure.
Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
They can say I've lost can live in